15 years ago, 20 years ago, we as a business, as a sector, made it clear that every student should have their own bedroom and their own bathroom. And bed bath parity was absolutely critical. And we sold it incredibly well. The cat's out of the bag, and we've got to figure out how to put it back in, right? We've got to figure out how to tell the story that you don't actually need bed bath parity, even though we said you did for 15 years.
The phone.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is gonna be, if I'm a technician and I'm green, this has become, it is my main tool that helps me. It's gonna be my training body.
One of the benefits of AI, and I think we're already starting to see it, is it's gonna kick off one of the most entrepreneurial periods in history.
If you were to pick one sacred cow of multifamily student housing that you wanna kill right here on camera, which one would that be?
There's a lot, but
and it could be more than
no, I do have one right now.
Andy, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the beginnings, the origins. Tell me about the origins of student bars.
A couple of maybe things that happened along the way that are interesting to note. I went to grad school, and I went into grad school thinking I wanted to be a consultant or an investment banker, and was really thrilled to get a job offer and to join BCG. But the last quarter of grad school, we had a guest professor come in and teach a short course, Jim Collins, who many know from the books Built to Last and Good to Great, and a few others that were bestsellers. And Jim asked us at the time, how many of you are going into investment banking? About half the class raised their hand. And then he asked, how many are going to consulting? And pretty much the other half raised their hand. And he said, well, you should all rescind your offers right now, and you should start your own company or buy a small business. And we all kind of thought he was crazy. But that stuck in my mind. And as life changed, I realized that he was right. I probably should have done that right away. Instead, I waited until I had a house and a mortgage and kids and private school and all of those things, and realized that it was something I really wanted to do. And so, as we were coming out of the financial crisis, I thought, if not now, when? And decided to leave my job and start student quarters. I thought it would be relatively easy and straightforward. It doesn't ever work that way.
Did you start it on your own, or did you have any associates that joined you?
I started it on my own. Literally set up a computer in the office next to the bedroom. One of the things I realized really quickly is that it wasn't a one-man opportunity. And so I pretty quickly found some partners that were in other sectors of real estate that were interested in helping me get started. And then I brought on my first employee he waited until we did our first deal and the water was a little warmer, and then joined us about 10 months after we started. And that began kind of the evolution of the business and the company.
Tell me about the first deal.
So the first deal, I thought it was going to be a deal at Valdosta State University. Startup, you're not going to go buy a deal at the University of Georgia. I run across this opportunity and thought it was pretty intriguing. And I was actually up with the couple people that I was partnering with, trying to explain it to them. And we were on the way back from Valdosta, and an opportunity came up at West Georgia. It was a deal that had been developed, ran out of money, went into receivership. The bank then was acquired by another bank, and it had just gotten lost in the shuffle. And it had negative NOI. And how do you know how to value that? But it intrigued one of the capital partners that we had tried to get interested in. And so we decided to do it friends and family. We bought it, turned it around, and then that person ended up introducing us to our first institutional partner, which was LIM out of Chicago.
How hard was to get your first institutional partner?
It was really hard. And I would say it wasn't hard just getting the first institutional partner, but then Once we got that institutional partner, transforming the business, becoming institutional ourselves is even harder than that. Institutions want things done a particular way, and Andy Feinour, one man, is not going to be able to do all of the things that they required, and so it really made us realize how much we needed to grow, where our holes were and our deficiencies were, and I think brought to life one of the things that's stuck with me. Now we're 13 years in, and it's still the same conversation, which is once you start to get profitable, you start to the economics start to look better. It's probably time to reinvest, and making those decisions is hard, but it's also really important to the success of the business.
What made the first institutional partner say yes to you?
I think certainly there was a relationship there, and that relationship from a previous experience gave them some comfort in our abilities. But I think we also had a pretty unique and an interesting approach to a sector that was starting to get the attention of institutions. And in that particular instance, the idea of centralizing and rolling up some smaller properties made a lot of sense, and I think resonated with that institutional investor.
What's your current footprint?
So as we sit today, we've actually been probably net sellers over the last couple of years as opposed to net buyers. We're active on both sides, but we have about 12,500 beds, 27 properties, probably 21 campuses across the United States. Pretty excited because the capital markets are coming back, and we do have more deals under contract today than we put under contract in the last 2 years combined. So I think the growth is coming back, and that's an exciting time for us.
So the market is turning.
I think so. You never know, right? None of us are clairvoyant. I think from our perspective, there was a bid-ask spread. Buyers and sellers were not on the same page. I think sellers were reluctantly hoping for a return to the good old days of free money and low cap rates, and tried to kick the can down the road as far as they could. But a lot of those groups are no longer able to do so. And I think that most of us in the real estate business have sort of gotten to a place where we feel pretty comfortable that we sort of know, or outside of existential shocks or whatever, but we sort of know what the new world looks like. And I think capital has been dipping their toe in the water and is now getting a bit more aggressive. So it feels good. Knock on wood. Hopefully that remains to be true.
When you're looking at the deal, what makes it appealing? What makes you say, this is the deal for us? We want to pursue?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the student housing space, I think there's two things that are important to us. One is the market itself. And there is a lot going on in higher education. Enrollments are shifting and realigning. There's just a lot of different things that are driving different performance in different markets. And so really understanding what schools we think are going to disproportionately benefit from that, and where we think a long-term success platform exists is important. And then trying to find underperforming real estate. What we do well, what's our DNA, is finding a deal that's performing worse than it should be relative to its peers, understanding why it's performing worse, and then coming up with the business plan and the execution strategy to turn that around. And so a lot of times you'll see a really nice deal. It's very attractive, but it might be operating pretty well, and the opportunity to drive NOI growth just isn't there. And so for us, it's trying to find that opportunity where we have a turnaround opportunity in a market that we believe long-term in.
So nowadays, I think it's becoming more prevalent that part of running a very good management game is having the right technology deployed and having the right people actually being behind the technology. Because ultimately, technology is a tool. I think if we're looking at technology and we're thinking is the end all be all, and I'm seeing this, and I've seen this for a very long time, I think it leads to a lot of pain. So, in advent of technology and especially AI, what are some opportunities out there that you see to leverage this type of technology to actually get your assets and assets in general, not just yours, perform better?
Yeah, boy, it's a wide open playing field. I mean, before we started the podcast, I was mentioning that, real estate in general is one of the least technically savvy industries out there. And I would say student housing is amongst the least technically savvy sectors within the real estate business. And, we've relied for years and years on temporary labor, on, folks that go to school that live in our properties to spread the word of mouth and to drive performance. And, we're sitting at a point in time where AI and all of these new technologies are going to completely turn everything upside down. And this is similar to the Industrial Revolution. It's similar to the start of the internet and all of the opportunities that created. And really, there's not a single area of our business that I can think of that won't be impacted by this. And that's exciting, and it's also scary, if we're honest. I think the early returns have been related to leasing and pricing, more on the marketing side of the business. But we're seeing new startups and new opportunities on all facets of the business. And, I think the hard part is to figure out which ones do we believe in and which ones do we institute. And I think there's a tendency to want to buy into a lot of different stories and put a lot of things, to work. But that's not a really good way to get any value out of anything. So I think for us, it's about which ones do we truly believe in, and how do we go deep with those and maximize the value creation?
Since you're in a very particular niche of real estate, student housing, obviously your business is very much dependent of how well a university does, a particular one that you're associating your properties with. And let's just say that their enrollment numbers are going down, it becomes a less appealing. That will affect your business too.
For sure. And in the early days, we were probably more focused on, the opportunity, the specific property that we could buy, and less focused on markets. And we learned some lessons along the way. I mentioned that I thought our first deal would be at Valdosta State. One of our early deals was at Valdosta State. We ended up doing that transaction. And then Valdosta State had been on a big capital campaign. They had done a lot of buildings. It looked to be a university that was poised to do well. They lost their chancellor. They had a very unfortunate, incident on campus related to some racial tensions and relations, and got some bad publicity. And in fact, enrollment did go down. And fortunately for us, we were able to sort of navigate through those troubled waters and turn the property, into a successful project. But it was very concerning. A similar situation at Middle Tennessee State University. They were looking to grow enrollment. They sort of attracted the wrong type. A lot of crime in that market, a lot of challenges associated with how to manage through that. But again, I think the desire to make sure that we adapted, changed, and sort of tried to create, a positive result out of a different circumstances. And then as a company, we've really moved away from investing in those types of markets. If you look at what's going on now, in the U.S., conference realignment at the athletic level is a really big deal. And it's only going to become a bigger deal. And so you're seeing a lot of kids from the Northeast now attending college in the Southeast. The SEC schools, the Big Ten schools that are getting the dominant share of your TV are getting more and more applications, and their enrollment is growing. Some of the smaller schools, some of the private schools, their enrollment is declining. And so one of the things that we're trying to do as a company is get in front of that. Which schools do we think are going to win in all of that process? And which schools do we think might get shaken out? And then how do we build a portfolio in those locations? And it's not just the largest. I mean, obviously, if you're the University of Texas or the University of Georgia, you're very well positioned moving forward. But there are all kinds of schools that have been maybe in a secondary conference that are being elevated up into that next level, that are also getting positive enrollment trends and growth. And you factor in population shifts and all those other things, and it's really, really important to us to get that right.
I want to touch on a different aspect of universities, and it's actually education, how education is impacted by technology, how so many jobs are disappearing, like jobs that we know today, they're not going to be around 1, 3, 5 years from now. Even jobs that young students are actually preparing for. So I could see in a current environment where you will be a freshman, you will go to college, and then by the time you graduate 4 years later, some or most or all of the stuff that you have learned, it becomes obsolete. In other words, I'm just gonna say I'm just gonna pick a profession, but for the sake of argument, not because that's gonna happen with that profession. Let's just say that you're preparing to be, let's just say a programmer, because that's probably very likely to be disappearing. It's becoming extinct. So you study computer science, and then you become a programmer, or you get ready, and by the time you graduate, AI does all the programming with just a few basic prompts, right? So there's no need for you for what you. I could see how that will affect enrollment, and it could have a negative impact on your business. Are you taking that into consideration?
Yeah, for sure. If you go back to pre-COVID, the looming cloud in the student housing space was online education going to supplant in-person education? And COVID hit. We had a national referendum on that topic, because elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, grad schools went to an online environment. And the good news for student housing business is nobody liked it. While you could essentially learn or teach some of the same things in that environment, you lost the experience and you lost the humanity part of it. And so parents didn't like it, kids didn't like it, professors didn't like it, administrators didn't like it. But that didn't mean a return to what was there before. It meant a shift and a change in how programs are delivered. So now a lot of classes are delivered online to the kids that are right there on campus. But what's happening is then there's a lot of experiential learning that's facilitated on campuses and throughout the members, that is the so what of what you're learning. And so universities have been shifting very rapidly to do that. I think your point on, a lot of these majors, they may create, graduates that don't really have a function. But I don't think it's that people don't have a function. I think it's that they have to learn how to adopt. And to me, the skill set that's going to be most valuable going forward is, what do I do with the information that's at hand? There's more information, there's more data, there's more possibilities than there ever have been before. How do you differentiate yourself? You're able to sift through that. You're able to put a thought process together about what to do with it. So, computer science majors are going to have to learn about, if AI, if other people can do the programming faster and better than I can, then what's the problem we're trying to solve? And how do we put that to use? And how do we generate value in that way? I think the education system will shift pretty quickly and adopt to that. And I think, the demand will be there. But yeah, it's always a concern. I think where we take solace is that COVID experience, where so much of going to college, yes, there's a major and there's a subject matter that you're trying to master, but it's also where you go to learn how to live with your peers, how to live on your own, how to interact with your peers, and how to start those kinds of experiences that will make you productive going forward. And I think that there's just a shift. And long term, I think it'll be very positive for us in the space.
Very interesting.
It's time gate entry systems were reimagined Tired of dealing with clickers, key fobs, broken call boxes, and keypads everyone has the code to? Imagine managing multiple properties and realizing your keys are miles away. With Gatewise, access is in your pocket. No codes, no hassle. Residents can let in guests or deliveries from anywhere with a single tap. Gatewise integrates with your property management system, automatically revoking access when residents move out. The Gatewise management portal makes it easy to control every access point remotely from any device. No dedicated computer required, just smart, flexible control at your fingertips. Gatewise also supports self-storage, giving your team cloud-based control over tenant access. Fast, secure, and fully remote. More convenience for your residents, more time and cost savings for your team.
If you were to pick one sacred cow of multifamily student housing that you want to kill right here on camera, which one would that be?
There's a lot, but
And it could be more than one.
no, I do have one right now because I think it's doing our sector a disservice, and we created it. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we as a business, as a sector, made it clear that every student should have their own bedroom and their own bathroom, and bed bath parity was absolutely critical. And we sold it incredibly well. Every kid feels like it's their right to be in a nice property with great amenities and have their own bed and their own bath. That worked fairly well, but as costs have gotten more and more out of control and as rents have continued to grow, we're at a place where we're not able to deliver student housing in that bed bath parity realm to keep up with the demand. And so now, the cat's out of the bag, and we've got to figure out how to put it back in, right? We've got to figure out how to tell the story that you don't actually need bed bath parity, even though we said you did for 15 years, and that, shared living arrangements and things of that nature are actually a positive. And I think it's going to be a challenge for the industry. I personally don't believe that the ceiling is going to keep rising on rents, and the escalation of if you will, of amenities and features in our buildings is going to continue. I think it's going to shift, and we're going to have to undo that sacred cow.
Excellent. There's a lot of fear about AI influencing management decisions to eliminate jobs. And I think it's a very founded fear. I've seen robots that now install roofing, hang out drywall, and although they might not be 100% sophisticated like plug and play solution, they aren't today. But with the way the technology advances at a pace that we never experienced in history, you mentioned the Industrial Revolution. This is very similar, but only way faster than any industrial revolution we've been through. I think it's actually faster than our brain has the capacity to gauge, to say is moving at this speed. I think it's just something incredible, because I'm just based on at the rate that I'm seeing new things every day.
It's extremely disruptive. I mean, it
It's
is
very disruptive.
It is almost a perfect disruptive technology.
Yeah. So in light of that, if you were to start student course today, knowing what's coming, what would be one thing that you will do from the very beginning in regards to technology and maybe specifically to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we grew up in a world where everything was done locally. We'd have a general manager and an AGM who would collect rents and do the books, and we would have a leasing manager, and we'd have community assistants, and we've built fairly significant teams at our properties that are in many cases underexperienced, and we've trusted them to drive success and value creation. And the things that can be done now centrally, the things that you can do. I mean, 15 years ago, the idea of signing a lease without any human interaction was completely unimaginable, right? Every year we sign a greater percentage of leases without them ever taking a tour of the property or interacting with any of our on-site teams, right? Like, that's coming. And so I think we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to think more about centralization. It doesn't mean that the on-site team role goes away, but it does change. And what I think it's going to create is it's going to create an opportunity for two types of people at the site level. One is creative problem solvers, and essentially, if you think about it, each one of our properties is its own business, right?
Yes.
And so
A skill business.
it's a skilled
We should say a
business,
skill business.
and I think we should be hiring CEOs of those businesses. That's not typically what we've done, but someone that can understand what's happening in the market, someone that can really understand the dynamics of the student body and what they're looking for, and really think on their feet as all this data and other things are coming at them, is going to be a real difference maker. And I also think, back to the basics, customer service, tenant experience is going to get that much more important, because we will free up time of the number of people on site. And maybe we don't need 7 or 8 per property. Maybe we need 3 or 4. But those people are going to be tasked with the human touch on the process. And look, our tenants are in a very, they're 18 to 24 years old, right? They're still learning sort of how to operate on their own, how to interact with things. And I think our on-site personnel can be really impactful. But it's really thinking about that human element and how we can help them develop that can differentiate us versus other property managers. And so it's a shift and an evolution. I agree. People are going to have to reinvent themselves and figure out how to add value in a new world. And that is, it's scary. We've got history that tells us that, we've been really successful at doing that, but it's going to take an effort.
It's been said on this set here by other CEOs that plumbers, electricians, HVAC technicians are the millionaires of the future. Some argue they're the millionaires of the present, because AI doesn't seem to evolve to where you will take any of those jobs anytime soon. What's your take on this particular?
So I've always,
you obviously run on operations side. You have a lot of maintenance personnel there.
I've always thought that the U.S. education system does a bit of a disservice because it's all about knowledge jobs, and there's so much pressure for kids to go to college and to get a degree, and rightly so. There have been a lot of very high paying, jobs that have come out of that. But I think we've not valued enough the trades, and we need outstanding auto mechanics, and we need outstanding, in our business, maintenance personnel, and we really haven't provided a mechanism for that to happen in our space. And perhaps a little bit of this will reshift some of those priorities back to that. But look, AI is going to change that world as well. And I think incredibly for the positive. AI is probably not going to go into the units and change the filters and do those kinds of things. But man, how how incredibly powerful could it be from a preventative maintenance side? All of the information about all of the systems, about all of the dates and all of those things, and using its intelligence to really predict and stabilize maintenance, capex spend, all of those kinds of things. Someone still has to do it, and that's going to be, I think, at the forefront. And I look, I've never understood sort of the two different levels or strata of folks in a real estate operating business. From the start, for us, our maintenance teams were treated the same way as our general managers, as our assistant general managers, our leasing managers. They have a seat at the table, and they're critically important. And I think their world's going to change. I think really for the positive, and I think their experiences and their voice at the table is only going to increase.
I want to bring a couple of more ingredients here in what you just said. So, the phone,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
This is going to be, if I'm a technician and I'm green, this has become, it is my main tool that helps me. It's going to be my training body. The way we taught training in general in multifamily is watch a 30-minute or a 60-minute video, try to memorize as much as you can, take a test, pass the test, get your score, that's a passing score, forget everything the next day. And it still is. Like, it's a huge checklist. We check the boxes, we check the boxes, we check the box. Okay. Some argue that there's a better way to learn, and that's what they call micro learning, right? To watch 3 to 5 minute videos that are how to change a garbage disposal, for
I
example.
watched one this morning before I came here.
You need to change your garbage disposal at home.
No, it wasn't a garbage disposal, but something was broken, and I figured let's figure out how to fix it, right?
You do it all the time. I actually think that there's technology that's even better than that. Basically, through AI agents, you could have like an agent that assists you that basically knows what you don't know. Basically, and it's also like, this is not blanket training, like the checklist type of training that we're talking about. It's actually individualized training that actually feeds you the information you don't know yet. It also does it in a conversational way. In other words, I don't even need an agent. Like, that's kind of like the advanced thing. I could literally take a picture.
And they'll walk you through it.
I could take a picture of some wires on an AC unit, and then plug it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT what could be wrong with this wiring. And I have a pretty good chance that ChatGPT will come up with some good solutions to guide me through. If we're talking about agents, like, this is like an even more advanced thing, because that's not like the large learning model. Those agents are using from the large learning model, from all the information that's available throughout the world, I should say, and knowledge, just the particular one that you need, and feed that exactly to you. So imagine back and forth talking with a mentor of yours, right? And learning on the go. Just saying, hey, what do I do with these words? What they're for? And then literally the agent will communicate with you and will give you the answers. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, imagine they came up with the meta glasses, right? And although they don't have a lot of autonomy.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah, so imagine that you're green, right? And you have almost zero training. And then you have a service request to troubleshoot an electrical problem. And imagine having those goggles, those glasses on, and imagine looking at the panel, and literally you have an AI connected to those glasses that walk you through. I don't think we're far from that.
I would agree with that. It's interesting because I think it means more people can be effective and can deal with those kinds of issues. But it also reinforces something that we kind of always knew, which is the main indication of satisfaction of our residents is really dictated by their interactions with our maintenance staff. Perhaps specific skills and certifications will become less valuable, but those folks are still at the front line, and the relationships that they develop with our tenants, and the way in which and the speed at which they deal with problems will become even more important. And it's not just those jobs. I mean, I'm pretty sure AI would be in line to take my job. And so it's scary, but it's also, I think it's exciting. And yeah, I mean, we're likely to see more change in the next 5 years than we did in the previous 30.
Speaking of your job, so let's talk about white collar jobs. I think a lot of them will disappear, and those that won't disappear will be reshaped. They're not going to be done like they are today. That's one thought. Second thought is, I think AI is going to expose a lot of inefficiencies or like lack of decisions, which honestly, if we were to be very honest, we see a lot in the industry. Individuals like, at the top level, not wanting to take risks, just enough risk so we could, get by, because this is a model that's been working. But what I see AI doing is, like you said, it's a huge disruption, and people won't be able to hold on to the status quo, the executive level folks, and then that's going to create a disruption. And I think it's going to be for the better, really, because it's for the betterment of the industry and actually of the society too.
I agree with that.
We don't live in a bubble. We've been acting like it for the longest, like living in a bottle. So I love your thoughts on those.
I think you're right on all accounts. You think about some of the white collar jobs out there. I mean, I mentioned at the start of this that I wanted to be and was in the consulting business before I got into real estate. And if you're a consultant, then you're helping people solve problems when they can just go into ChatGPT and say everything that's happening, and it's going to spit out a report in seconds, literally. That's pretty scary, right? And so people that are in that field are going to have to figure out how to leverage that and how to make themselves relevant, or they're going to have to change fields and careers. I still think that people that can effectively process data and make more good decisions than bad ones will remain relevant. My advice to my own children and to that younger generation is, change is going to happen whether you like it or not, and the faster you just admit that and start to think about what's going to be important and sort of adopt into it, the better off you are.
You mentioned advice to the young generation. So what do you think are the skills of the future? Let's just not talk about jobs, because we don't know. Like, that's work in progress and it's changing by the day. But skills, someone said to me, for example, is becoming probably one of the most, if not the most valuable skill, is to master the English language, because the large
or multiple languages.
Yes, but the large learning models are operated by humans. The better prompts, the more clear you could be in the way you express those prompts, the better it is. Therefore, better output, because it's that saying, trash in, trash out. If you just do like a lazy prompt and say, write the best article about multifamily housing, boom, and it just writes something for you. But when you get to specifics, and what specifics do you want, what data do you want to back up that writing, it gets so granular. It could be, I use myself AI for writing documents too, for writing articles. Sometimes I find myself in a rabbit hole because I do like 30 to 40 iterations. It takes me 3 to 4 hours, because I don't give up just to fill in space. I use AI as an assistant, not as someone to like think for me, like you said. So back to the question, what skills do you think that are going to be very, very valuable in the future for the young generation?
Yeah, I think it's less about, look, I go back to when I was in school and calculators existed, but they taught us in math class how to do it manually without a calculator. And I always thought that was kind of weird, right? And, when am I not going to have a calculator? And then, computers and internet and all of these things. Well, now you've just got all that on steroids, right? And so learning how to do something, I think probably becomes less important, and learning, how to solve problems and how to apply stuff becomes much more interesting. I actually think one of the benefits of AI, and I think we're already starting to see it, is it's going to kick off one of the most entrepreneurial periods in history. People trying to think about what's a problem in their lives and how can I solve it. Um, it's going to be really important, and so I just think staying with the thought process around it's not the information, it's what you do with it, and how do we solve problems and create value is the should be the focus of everyone.
So critical thinking,
Lots of critical thinking.
I think so too.
I mean, you know, I ask ChatGPT stuff all the time. The information it's gathering is certainly relevant, and it's certainly something I think about, but it's not necessarily always correct. And there's little subtleties to it, tone and human interaction and all of these kinds of things. And I think that's another skill that I think is going to be critically important going forward, is not just critical thinking, but then your ability to relate to one another and to implement things. And I think those human skills become more and more relevant.
Technology, we've been inundated with technology since COVID, because obviously we had that period where we couldn't do one-on-one interaction. So market spoke, and a lot of products were created especially to deal with that situation, to replace that human interaction. And a couple of years later, we're stuck with a lot of technology that might or might not be relevant anymore. And I think a lot of creative minds and prop tech founders have found that as okay, now it's the time. Now it's the time for technology, and especially with the advent of AI, right? We're seeing things unprecedented in the industry. In other words, how do you vet technology? I'm curious, because I'm sure that there's a ton of technology coming at you, and then what's your process of vetting technology? What's good for your business?
I think one of the challenges is there's so many options, and I think to get the value out of any option, you've got to go a bit deeper. And so I think that the tendency, because you don't want to lose ground, right? Oh, somebody's using AI in leasing, somebody's doing this in maintenance, somebody's doing that, and you can sort of go a little bit, deep in a mile wide. Maybe that has some quick benefits, but I don't think it ultimately is very successful. And so for us, what we're trying to figure out is which of those do we really want to invest in, and do we really want to go deep into, and maybe getting the most out of 3 or 4 is a better strategy than getting a little bit out of 15 or 20. And part of that's financial, understanding where you're reducing your costs and being more efficient, and part of that's still experiential. Every week I'll call, because I need to change a doctor's appointment, or I need to, log into a program or whatever. And sometimes those experiences go really well, and sometimes they're just really frustrating. We're trying to figure out which ones are, maybe they solve a problem, but they're still really frustrating and cause a sort of a negative reaction, versus which ones do residents, do investors, do others feel really good about.
If you were to look at student quarters 10 years from now, and you won't be Andy, you will be a different person, what would you hope to see from outside looking in?
I think it's not wrong to say that the business will look nothing like it looks today, 10 years from today. I think it's organized differently. I think it's I think a lot of it is centralized. A lot of it is machine driven. But what I hope it is, and it's consistent with something that's important to us, which is our vision of being a preeminent partner. We talk about a preeminent partner for our employees, for our investors, and for our tenants. And what does that mean? And we think about it in terms of we want to be the group that they most like to interact with and deal with. And so while all that other stuff will change, I hope that personal touch, that relationship driven approach across all of those sectors remains our calling card.
As we wrap up this conversation, Andy, what are some final thoughts that you have? Maybe something you wish we would have touched during the conversation and we didn't have opportunity to, or something totally different?
I mean, I think we've hit on a lot of really relevant things. I think the speed of change is going to be dizzying. In the areas that we've started to see progress, that's going to accelerate rapidly. In the areas where we haven't seen it enter, it's going to. From our perspective, we're looking for opportunities where we can make long-term investments and have successful properties. And I think understanding how all that's going to play out, which is a critical thinking and a data-driven, kind of decision-making approach, is going to be really important. And I think we're excited about it. I mean, you can sit here and say, woe is me, I may not be necessary, my company may not be necessary, or you can sit here and say that there's never been more opportunity and there's never been a better canvas to paint on, right? And so, I think that's the key, is let's embrace it and let's push forward.
I learned in life that for each challenge, there's an equal opportunity.
That's right.
It's all about how you look at it.
That's right. And I do think, and that's something that we've been really harping on within our company, is, and it doesn't have to be AI related. It can just be market conditions or whatever else, is nothing's going to happen exactly as you expected. And every moment that you take worrying about it and blaming or creating excuses is a moment that was wasted, that you didn't sort of go in a different direction. And so we preach in our company this ownership mentality. Yes, it didn't happen as you expected, but we still have a job to do. And so let's get on to what else can we do? How do we fix the situation? How do we make it better? And let's spend our energy there. And I think if we can continue to do that, we'll continue to have success.
And it's been great having you.
Great to see
here
you
today.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.